Right, folks, I'm joined now on the show by a gentleman whose work I'm a huge fan of, and I've dragged him onto the show, kicking and screaming, to talk about the new Kantation album, which is out now as we speak. And welcome to the show, Mr. Martin DeBourge.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
Well, Martin, I say we've probably been hooked up now for a few years on the show. Obviously, you're partially responsible for the fabulous intro to the show.
Yes, in fact, I am. I appreciate you giving me that opportunity. That was done with a project I'm involved with called Head Transfer Process. And I remember when you asked for that intro, we slapped something together. We're inspired by it, and you liked it too, so we were off and running.
I get a lot of comments from people asking me who did the intro, because they say, "God, that really rocks, that really hammers up." I said, "Well, Martin tends to lend himself to some pretty decent projects, and I mean, I've not been disappointed by anything you've done so far, nor have I been disappointed by the Kantation album."
Well, that's high praise, and I appreciate you saying it. We get to that age where life is just too short to do things that you're unhappy with. So I've been fortunate enough to work with some great guys, and Kantation's next in that line.
So what got you hooked up with the guys for doing this album? Was it just a mutual thing you all suddenly decided on, or did they say, "Martin, we want you to sing," or?
Yeah. Well, what's interesting is there's a little bit of history with 3 out of 4 of the members, but the real quick synopsis is up here in what we call the high desert of Southern California, a mutual friend of ours had passed. When I say ours, I'm talking about me and the guitarist Nano Lugo, who I hadn't known before we got together for this, what we call the memorial gig. And when this mutual friend of ours had passed, Nano and I chatted online a little bit. He suggested that we get together and do a song by Dio, which we did. He learned his parts. We did Rainbow in the Dark, and he was duly, I suppose, impressed that a local singer he hadn't known about could pull off a Dio song, and as was I impressed that this guy was able to pull off some of those Blackmore riffs. So we get to talking, and sure enough, we had a lot in common, and he thought it would be cool to do a little project. We did one song, thinking that might be the end of it, but it blossomed into a whole album. So the rest of the guys in the band, like I said, the drummer, Ocasio Carvalho, who was the studio drummer for this week, he and I had worked on some projects together, a project called Questro that has Brian Beller from Steve Vai's band on it that has yet to be released. So, but Ocasio and I have a little bit of history. And now Brian Carula, the bass player, he had been a guy that I had seen often. So anyway, in his other broad projects and bands.
Sure.
So in the end, all of us got together and we're hitting it off.
Well, so obviously, you're no stranger to singing a Dio song. If we go back to, of course, what was the charity single that you did, what was the feedback you got from that? I mean, I thought you absolutely nailed it. I mean, as everybody knows, and you know only too well, that I only play stuff on the show that I like.
Right.
I mean, I plugged the hell out of it because I just thought it was, but not just from the charity point of view. I just thought that you really nailed that song.
And I appreciate you saying so. And, as a quick aside, I appreciate guys like you for that reason, what I call the rebels of radio these days, where none of this BS of playing songs that corporate says, hey, this is what you've got to spin. You're going to spin what you like to hear, and I think that's great. But as far as that was Stargazer, and that included even Steve Smith from Nevermore did a solo piece on that for us. We thought we had some gangbuster participation on that song, and we pulled out all the stops to really release that. And like I said, I appreciate your promotion on it too. I think I was a little surprised it didn't catch as well as it should have. There might be a few things stacked up against us on that, but in the end, maybe it'll resurface. I certainly hope it does.
Well, I hope it does as well. I mean, I'm going to be playing it on the show again this week after this interview.
Awesome.
Why things do or don't become a hit, well, you know what the music industry, well, you know only too well, obviously, with your studio work. This industry, how the hell do you fathom it out now? I mean, I struggle to work out how certain things are the way they are.
And I'm with you on that one. You know, if I get close to conjecture on anything about that sort of thing, you know, in fact, Kantation is surprising me on that level. Here's one that, okay, I enjoy this, but you know, I don't know what people will think of it, and it really just picked up steam, and the snowball's getting larger and larger on it, and it seems like it's with a little bit of minimal effort. And I think, you just, as with anything, you hit somebody at the right place at the right time, and for some reason it takes off. You know, if we could figure it out and there was a formula, I guess we'd all be stars.
Well, the problem, though, when you get into a formula, I'm going to be forthright and say that I think Frontiers Records have a well-known formula, which gets to a point where you're guessing, well, which band is it? Because is it this band or is it that band? Because if I shut my eyes, to be honest, I don't really know. And if you go in and record a song based on, is this going to be a success? Are people going to like it? I think you're going to doom to fail. At the end of the day, if you like it, it's going to shine through.
You're absolutely right. And, not to get too deeply philosophical about it, but I've always believed that
not on this show.
No, not but I've always believed that music is, based in community and in groups. And, just because, I can sit here and listen to an album that I thought was absolutely amazing, blew my mind, it'd be ignorant for me to think I'm the only one sitting here on the planet that thinks that this album is also amazing, just because it's not a hit. Certainly there are groups out there, and I think internet and internet radio has brought us together in those groups. So, in the end, whether they be small groups or large groups is anybody's guess. But another friend of mine likes to remind me that we're in what he calls the Wild West of the music industry, where there are no rules quite yet. We're still kind of figuring things out. In the scope of things, internet and internet promotion is still somewhat, in its infancy. So we'll see how things pan out.
I think it's a case of some people have absolutely really grasped the whole internet thing, i.e. airplay, promotion. Funnily enough, I was reading something only this morning on the melodicrock.com site. There was a comment that Andrew made that there's a new album out by Starship, but it's not being promoted outside of the States. It's not being sent to anybody for airplay or listening. You think, well, ever heard of the internet? I mean, Christ, it's not difficult, is it?
Right. Well, I know that I was, I've always been a big fan of Foreigner. And this was, right before Lou Gramm was not a part of the band anymore. I remember, when there were groups, it's partly how I met my wife, was being part of a Foreigner chat group, and we were all bewildered. Why aren't these guys, now it's different, maybe because they've got the new singer from Hurricane with them and some other guys, and they've got some young blood in there that kind of understands the value of the internet, but it was a surprise that there was no Foreigner.com for a while there, and, how are these guys even letting us know what they're up to, et cetera. But, yeah, like I said, we're still in that Wild West, and we're still trying to figure out what's going on.
Well, so Foreigner is I'm a big fan of Foreigner, but I've got to say, probably my favourite band is actually not got Lou Gramm or Kelly on, and that's Unusual Heat. I've always ranked that right up in my top 3. Really? I'm glad to hear it. That music is about community and groups, and I'm glad I'm not the only freak left on the planet that still loves them. But no, I was a big fan. Like I said, with their new formation, Mick Jones being the only original member, it's still great. Don't get me wrong, I think it's still good. But I'm a Lou Gramm purist, and to me, Foreigner is not the same without him. Well, there's always room in a canoe with me because, I am always the man in the canoe when it comes to my musical taste. I don't follow the crowd. And going back to what you said before, I don't know about being a radio rebel. I only play stuff on the show that I like for pure and simple reason. How can you be honest and enthusiastic about the music you're playing if you don't bloody like it?
Sure thing, which is probably why you and I'm venturing to guess when we walk into a shoe store, the last thing we hate is being approached by a salesman who you know is not passionate about that shoe he's selling you.
Oh,
you know?
God, yeah. You know me well, Martin.
But you know what you like to wear, and you know you're going to put that shoe on, and if it's the right shoe, you're going to walk out with it. And it's the same thing with music, and it's the same thing with the internet in a way. Where, you know, and that's why I refer to you guys like you as the rebels, because, you know, damn it, I'm going to play what I like, not necessarily what this guy says I have to spend.
Damn right. Are we going to hear any more head transfer in the future? Because, I mean, I've liked the stuff you've sent me over of that, and obviously I played it on the show, and I'd love to hear some more.
Yes, the long and the short of it is yes, you will. And I enjoy it as well. You know, it's a departure from what I do in Kantation. Kantation's more of a guttural, straight-ahead, heavy formation of what we do. And there's elements of that in head transfer process, but head transfer is leaning more towards the progressive side of things, which I've always had a heart for. But to answer your question directly, yes, there is going to be more. You know, there's you know, when you got 5 guys in a band that have other projects as well, the logistics can get a little. They're mounting, actually, not just a little about anything about it. It's mounting.
Well, but I mean, you guys are just involved in so many different projects. I don't know how you find the time, to be honest.
Yeah, time can be an issue, but you know, it's also a matter of you know, we make the time. I mean, 5 guys, all the guys in the band love what we're doing in head transfer process. And it's not entirely about time. It's also about, you know, the click. And sometimes the click's got to be right. You know, with head transfer process, there were moments that we got together and it felt like teenagers again, where it wasn't an effort to write. Somebody came up with a riff and we were there. And for the first time in a long time for me as a vocalist, it was writing some things on the spot, which I found exhilarating. There's not a lot of projects that come that way for me anymore,
right?
Because these guys write their stuff, and here's what I want you to sing, and you know, it's got to grab me, or I won't sing it. And if it grabs me, I'm going to sing it. But with head transfer process, guys, there was a lot of spur of the moment stuff, which I found really exhilarating, and I think that's going to happen again. So, cool. Yeah, it's a lengthy answer to the answer of yes, there is going to be more.
One question I will ask you, because your view from, shall I say, the other side of the desk, from looking out from your side of the studio at the bands and singers you have come into your studio, how do you view the direction music is going? I mean, regarding quality, shall we say, as he badly words his question, do you see a lot of good talent coming through?
Yeah, and I appreciate you recognizing that and asking me that question, because it does give me an interesting perspective. You know, I've had guys in the band, in the studio, bands coming in as young as 17 years old. So it's interesting to have a pulse on that and see what the direction is. And my answer would be twofold, because it's again, it kind of harkens back to the comment I make about music industry being in the Old West, because it's interesting. These kids will come in here, younger guys, and they have a focus on what they want to do, whether they admit it or not. There's a root there, there's a history there, and again, you know, undoubtedly it comes from them hearing their mom and dad spinning their records at home, and so that influence is there. So that's encouraging to see. There is a lot of incredible talent out there, and as with any era, there's a lot of crap out there as well.
Sure.
But the interesting thing is from a marketability standpoint, these kids are still under, and I you know, I hate to say it, but I'm just going to be direct about it. These kids are still under the delusion that they're going to get discovered, they're going to get signed, and they're going to get a $2 million advance from the record company, and they're going to go on tour, and life's going to be grand.
Yeah.
And that's hard for them to break out of, and I'm surprised to see it from teenagers or even guys in their early 20s, because it's like, well, you guys, you know, we guys like you and I, Dan, we saw this transformation, we saw the transitions happening. so we know the way things used to be. We know the way things are.
Oh, sure.
These guys are still under the delusion that they're in 1977, and I don't know how they're getting that, where they're getting that from, and where they think that life's going to be different once they sign a contract, which just doesn't happen anymore. So. Well,
I had a discussion with a group of musician friends, I don't know, probably about 3 or 4 weeks ago, about the likes of X Factor, etc. And is this the Beelzebub in the room? And I said, the problem with it is, if you were to scratch something like that all the way back and view it as what it should be, which is a talent show to show talent, then that would be fine. But people are not going on there to be discovered as a talent. They're going on there because they want their 15 minutes of fame. If I saw people on there who were writing their own music, playing their own instruments, had done the pubs, clubs, and bars, then I might have a bit more respect for it.
Basically paying their dues. You really hit the nail on the head there. And as a vocal teacher here, and because I have access to places like Los Angeles and Vegas, where a lot of these auditions for those shows are happening, some of my own students have come in to me, and sometimes I get the quick ones. I've got 1 month to sound amazing. Please, help me sound amazing for my audition. and oftentimes I'll pose the same question you have, which is, well, what have you done? Oh, I don't know. I'm too young to go to karaoke, so I haven't really done anything that helps me, do my voice in front of an audience. And in the end, I suppose since you and I are both a little anti-corporate, we could say something to the degree of, well, if that's what you're shooting for, is that 15 minutes of fame, by all means, go for it. In the end, artistically, I think you compromised yourself, and, that's no surprise that guys like you and I would say that, I suppose. But you're right. In the end, it's about paying dues, and these guys and gals are not.
No, it's unfortunately, as you were just saying, I mean, we unfortunately are old enough to remember a different music industry when there was a lot of money thrown around, at good and at bad, and I don't think those days are ever going to come back. But bouncing back even further to when we're talking about the internet, I think it's great that young bands who harness that and exploit it and promote themselves and their music using it through the likes of Facebook or Reverb Nation or what have you, then my hat goes off to them, because
right. And if I can interject and respond to something, sure. and actually kind of expands on the other question you asked about what's happening with the bands that are coming into the studio. It's interesting because from an engineer perspective, for 3 or 4 years, I labored and stressed over how I'm going to get the most amazing, resilient, poppy drum sounds out of any band that comes into the studio, and how I can polish this to sound, there was a while there where everybody wanted it to just sound as crisp as everything. Well, it started with a young band that came in here about 2 years ago, right. Where I was going through the regular formula of, okay, guys, leave, because I got to spend 12 hours EQing these drums. Turns out they came in and they wanted me to dismiss everything I did, because what they really wanted was a retro sound. And in the end, letting them look over my shoulder and say, hey, change this and change this. Can you scale that back? No, that sounds, I've actually heard this expression. That sounds too good, et cetera, et cetera. And in the end, when I handed them what they got, I said, well, guys, it sounds like a demo from Black Sabbath that didn't quite make the cut. And they thought that was the greatest compliment ever. And I thought, at the moment, I thought, well, that's kind of frustrating to me. On the other hand, I thought, it's interesting, because they weren't the first. There's another line of them that have been coming to my studio that want a throwback sound, and they think they're going to achieve that, and so far they have. There's some talent out there that are doing it, but they think they're going to achieve that with that they've been calling lo-fi quality. And it's interesting because 3 or 4 years of work and honing that craft is out the window, but I'm liking what I'm seeing from these guys. It's a tip of the hat to the old ways of things, and I'm thinking that there might be a turn for that. Even for example, this Kantation album is kind of directed in that. There was, when I spent some time with Damien Thorne in Germany, I was surprised to see that, those fans have a pulse when they know those drums were fake. They know when those drums were.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, and so you know, they'd rather hear the mistakes, and they'd rather hear a little bit of flub up on that part and know that everything in there was authentic, etc. So there was a concerted effort there when we did the Kantation album to make it sound booming, to make it sound, you know, nice and fresh in quality as far as, you know, can it be spun by a DJ? Yes, it can, but on the other hand, too, you know, we really had to take a step back and say, okay, maybe that's overproducing it. Let's just let this thing fly where it needs to fly. And I think there's a big effort like that with a lot of the young musicians right now to sound, you know, like it wasn't overproduced, which I find in a way encouraging.
See, that's where you've hit the nail on the head. Is the reason I like the Kantation album is because it is, to me, harking back to that classic hard rock sound. And if I'm going to really stick my neck above the parapet, as I normally do anyway, I would say that the likes of Europe, especially the likes of Germany, etc., would be the market for the Kantation album. I would reckon it will do better over here than in the States.
And that those efforts are being applied there. You know, I can remember, and I appreciate you, who knows my history and knows what I've been involved with, would probably, you know, it would be no surprise to you that when I submitted Head Transfer Process to those guys overseas, there were very few bites. But the Kantation thing is taking off like wildfire, and the invites for going overseas to do gigs are already streaming in. So, you know, in a way it's surprising, and another way it's not, because it was an effort to say, hey, let's not overproduce this thing. Let's keep it, like you say, it's a throwback to that hard rock sound, to that metal sound that people enjoyed, where it was raw and it was authentic. And people are responding to it for that reason.
Well, Martin, all I can say is many thanks for coming on the show. I've taken up plenty of your time. As you know, I'm a great fan of yours, and all I can say is, you know, thank you a million times for all the support you've given back to the show, because I really appreciate that. Because not everybody hears, you know, the feedback that I get from people, and it's just great that you've supported me. So it's a big mutual backslap, I think.
I think so too, and I think the friendship will continue, and I appreciate that, Dan.
Well, I hope so. Otherwise, I'll hunt you down.
Like you Brits have been known to do.
Oh, absolutely. We may be a small island, but don't poke us with the pointy stick too many times.
Good stuff.
Mr. Martin DeBourge, many thanks indeed.
Thank you. Have a good one.